Welcome to the Alpine Church of Spiritual Living on this Merry Christmas morning. Good to see all these beautiful faces here. I'm going to be reading the thought for the week, and you can join me as we get down to the bottom area. This final Sunday in December brings us to the fourth spiritual gift of peace. What a more appropriate way to celebrate Christmas Day than the peace that passes understanding. Peace in our hearts and minds is truly the eternal gift sent to all of us through the Christ child. This abiding peace can only be experienced as we know with unwavering faith the love and joy that is continually given us by our Heavenly Father, residing deep within our own being. When we accept ourselves as worthy of hosting the God presence through us at every moment, we let go of fear, resentments, disappointments, and regrets, and are then truly free to live from our infinite nature and bask in blissful peace. Being present to the present is the gift. Let us receive it with free abandonment. Let us truly live in each moment, allowing the experience of life to move through us unimpeded, letting and allowing grace to flow through our trials and joys, through our sorrows and triumphs, through our everyday, perhaps mundane, encounters and experiences. We are free to truly accept the eternal gift of divine peace. May the dove of peace live in you this and every day, and may you be blessed beyond measure with God's grace. Say with me, I now accept the spiritual gift of the peace of the divine, knowing God continually guides my every step as I ask, believing in his saving grace. Thank you, dear Mother, Father God, that my heart is free from fear, so I am able and am an opening for your loving presence to live through me this day. I rest in your divine energy, knowing all is well, and it is so, and so it is. So our topic this morning is peace. We're coming to all the gifts of the season that we've experienced, which was faith and joy and love, and now peace. To me, this experience of Christmas reminds us that the Christ, which is within each and every one of us, is born anew, is coming to us at a new level, a deeper level of consciousness than where we were last year at Christmas time. And so I am joyous that we are here to celebrate the birth once again of this Christ child in a deeper level than we ever have before. I think that all of us feel that peace is a natural default. When we find ourselves in an upheaval, in concern, in worry, that is not the norm. That is something that our ego, that our mind has brought forth. But when we can just let that go and remember to remember that what is inside of us is so much more holy, so much more whole than what we see on the outside. And we can bring that essence and that energy of the divine that we are, each and every one of us, to every experience that comes our way. I'm going to do something different this morning than I've ever done. And one of these sales that we've been having, these Christmas sales in our room that came and went before Christmas, I was able to collect, excuse me, The Best of Guidepost Christmas, a book. And I've had it for a couple of years, but I'd never opened it. And you know how that goes. And it comes with like a nice cover that it slips into. And I finally took it out and started reading some of the stories in it. And I wanted to share one with you because I believe that we can all relate to it. It was written in December of 1987 by a fellow most of us recall named Jimmy Stewart. And it's called It Is a Wonderful Life. A friend told me recently that seeing a movie I made more than 40 years ago is a holiday tradition in his family, like putting up the Christmas tree. That movie is It's a Wonderful Life. And out of all the 80 films I've made, it's my favorite. But it has an odd history. When the war was over in 1945, I came home to California from 3 years of service in the Air Force. I had been away from the film business. My MGM contract had run out, and frankly, not knowing how to get started again, I was just a little bit scared. Hank Fonda was in the same boat, and we sort of wandered around together, talking, flying kites and stuff, but nothing much was happening. Then one day, Frank Capra phoned me. The great director had also been away in service, making the Why We Fight documentary series for the military, and he admitted to being a little frightened too, but he had a movie in mind. We met in his office to talk about it. He said the idea came from a Christmas story written by Philip Van Doren Stem. Stem couldn't sell the story anywhere, but he finally had 224-page pamphlets printed up at his own expense, and he sent them to his friends as greeting cards. Now listen, Frank began hesitantly. He seemed a little embarrassed about what he was going to say. The story starts in heaven, and it's sort of the Lord telling somebody to go down to earth because there's a fellow who's in trouble. And this heavenly being goes to a small town and... Frank swallowed and took a deep breath. Well, what it boils down to is this fellow who thinks he's a failure in life jumps off a bridge. The Lord sends down an angel named Clarence who hasn't earned his wings yet. And Clarence jumps into the water to save the guy. But the angel can't swim, so the guy has to save him. And then... Frank stopped and wiped his brow. This doesn't tell very well, does it? I jumped up. Frank, if you want to do a picture about a guy who jumps off a bridge and an angel named Clarence who hasn't won his wings yet coming down to save him, well, I'm your man. Production of It's a Wonderful Life started April 15th, 1946. And from the beginning, there was a certain something special about the film. Even the set was special. 2 months had been spent creating the town of Bedford Falls, New York. For the winter scenes, the special effects department invented a new kind of realistic snow instead of using traditional white cornflakes. As one of the longest American movie sets ever made until then, Bedford Falls had 75 stores and buildings on 4 acres with a 3-block main street lined with 20 full-grown oak trees. Can you envision? I mean, everybody has seen this movie, right? You remember those trees? Remember he hit the tree at the end, with his car? How big it was? How did they, in 2 months, they created this set. As I walked down that shady street the morning we started work, it reminded me of my own hometown in Indiana, Pennsylvania. I almost expected to hear the bells of the Presbyterian church where Mom played the organ and Dad sang in the choir. I chuckled, remembering how the fire siren would go off and Dad, a volunteer fireman, would slip out of the choir loft. If it was a false alarm, Dad would sneak back and sort of give a nod to everyone to assure them that none of their houses were in danger. I remembered how, after I got started in pictures, Dad, who'd come to California for a visit, asked, "And where do you go to church around here?" "Well," I stammered, I haven't been going. There's none around here." Dad disappeared and came back with 4 men. "You must not have looked very hard, Jim," he said, "because there's a Presbyterian church just 3 blocks down from here, and these are the elders. They're building a new building now, and I told them that you were a movie star and you could help them." And so Brentwood Presbyterian was the first church I belonged to out here. Later, that church was the one in which Gloria and I were married. A few years after that, it was the same church I'd slip into during the day when Gloria was near death after our twin girls were born. Then after we moved, we attended Beverly Hills Presbyterian, a church we could walk to. It wasn't the elaborate movie set, however, that made It's a Wonderful Life so different. Much of it was the story. The character I played was George Bailey, an ordinary man, the kind of fellow who thinks he's never accomplished anything in life. His dreams of becoming a famous architect, of traveling the world and living adventurously, have not been fulfilled. Instead, he feels trapped in a humdrum job in a small town. And when faced with a crisis in which he feels he has failed everyone, he breaks under the strain and flees to the bridge. That's when his guardian angel, Clarence, comes down on Christmas Eve to show him what his community would be like without him. The angel takes him back through his life to show how ordinary, everyday efforts are really big accomplishments. Clarence reveals how George Bailey's loyalty to his job at the Building and Loan office had saved families and homes, how his little kindnesses have changed the lives of others, and how the ripples of his love spread through the world, helping make it a better place. As good as the script was, there was still something else about the movie that made it different. It's hard to explain. I, for one, had things happen to me during the filming that never happened in any other picture I have made. In one scene, for example, George Bailey is faced with unjust criminal charges and, not knowing where to turn, ends up in a little roadside restaurant. He is unaware that most of the people in town are arduously praying for him. In this scene, at the lowest point in George Bailey's life, Frank Capra was shooting a long shot of me, slumped in despair. In agony, I raised my eyes and, following the script, plead, God, God, Father in heaven, I'm not a praying man, but if you're up there and you can hear me, show me the way. I'm at the end of my rope. Show me the way, God. As I said those words, I felt the loneliness, the hopelessness of people who had nowhere to turn, and my eyes filled with tears. I broke down sobbing. This was not planned at all. But the power of that prayer, the realization that our Father in heaven is there to help the helpless, had reduced me to tears. Frank, who loves spontaneity in his films, was elated. He wanted a close-up of me saying that prayer, but was sensitive enough to know that my breaking down was real and that repeating it in another take was unlikely. But Frank got his close-up anyway. The following week, we worked long hours he worked long hours in the film laboratory, again and again enlarging the frames of that scene so that eventually it would appear as a close-up on the screen. I believe nothing like this had ever been done before. It involved thousands of individual enlargements and extra time and money, but he felt it was worth it. There was a growing excitement among all of us as we worked day and night through the early summer of 1946. We threw everything we had into our work. Finally, after 3 months and shooting some 68 miles of 35-millimeter film, we completed the filming and had a big wrap-up party for everyone. It was an outdoor picnic with 3-legged races and burlap sprints, just like the picnics back in Pennsylvania. At the outing, Frank talked enthusiastically about the picture. He felt the film was as well as the actors would be up for Academy Awards. Both of us wanted it to win, not only because we believed in its message, but also for the reassurance we needed in this time of starting over. But life doesn't work out the way we want it to. The movie came out in December of 1946, and from the beginning we could tell it was not going to be the success we had hoped for. The critics had mixed reactions. Some liked it, a human drama of essential truth. Others felt it too sentimental, a figment of simple Pollyanna platitudes. As movie reviews came out, our hopes sank lower and lower. During the early February of 1947, 8 other current films, including Sinbad the Sailor and Betty Grable's The Shocking Miss Pilgrim, outranked it in the box office income. The post-war public seemed to prefer light-hearted fare. At the end of 1947, It's a Wonderful Life ranked 27th in earnings among the other releases that season. And although it earned several Oscar nominations, and despite our high hopes, it won nothing. Best Picture for 1946 went to The Best Years of Our Lives. By the end of 1947, the film was quietly put on the shelf. But a curious thing happened. The movie simply refused to stay on the shelf. Those who loved it a lot, and they must have told others. They wouldn't let it die any more than the angel Clarence would let George Bailey die. Then it began to be shown on television. A whole new audience fell in love with it. Today, after some 40 years, I've heard the film called an American cultural phenomenon. Well, maybe so, but it seems to me there is nothing phenomenal about the movie itself. It's simply about an ordinary man who discovers that living each ordinary day honorably, with faith in God and a selfless concern for others, can make for a truly wonderful life. To me, this is fitting for today, for Christmas, because it tells us how ordinary people, nobody special, have that Christ energy, that Christ essence, that loving being within us. I said this before this month, talking about the birth of Christ and how he was born in a stable, among the ordinary, among the lowly. When we reflect, when we know that our energy and our essence is the ordinary, that we're nothing special per se, and yet we have within us this special essence, this special energy of the divine. And when we can look out through these eyes to others and recognize that same energy within them, that we are no different, that within us and within everyone is the same Christ energy. And from that, we are shown, if we are available and if we are willing, what that divine energy wants to do through us. What that divine energy has in store that we have no idea. He talked about the film and how they wanted it to have such a wonderful accolades, and it didn't happen. Now that was written in 87. That he said 40 years ago. Well, it's a lot longer than that now. And how many of us in this society know that film? How many of the other films that he mentioned from that year that we even have heard of, that won the Academy Award? We have no clue. But because of the energy of that film, the message, the example that George Bailey did, living his life, doing his best, doing what was right in his mind and in his heart, he triumphed. He was saved, and he saved a lot of people. How many of us are these George Baileys living in today? We all can be these George Baileys when we live from the promptings of our heart and not worry about what we should or shouldn't do, but to feel that divine energy, that pulse that moves through us, to allow it openness. I wish you a very, very Merry Christmas, and one that will give you and bestow upon you the peace that passes understanding, more so than ever, at a deeper, more fuller level. Merry Christmas. Namaste.